The streets of Toronto glittered under strings of festive lights. Cold air bit at her cheeks. Snow crunched beneath her boots. Emily pulled her coat tighter. Her breath formed clouds that floated and disappeared into the night. She had come to Nathan's apartment for the first New Year together. Anticipation hummed in her chest. The scent of pine and cinnamon from nearby cafes lingered in the air. Music echoed from distant parties. Her heartbeat matched the rhythm of the city. The door opened. Nathan stood there, smiling, eyes sparkling. Warmth rushed through her limbs. He held a small box. Excitement surged. She stepped closer. Something felt off. A faint smell, metallic and sharp, reached her. The air felt heavier, almost stifling. Nathan's smile seemed strained. She blinked. The city lights reflected oddly in his eyes. She reached for the box. Her fingers grazed the surface. A cold shiver ran up her spine. The box was heavier than expected. Inside, she found a small, folded note. Her name was written in careful, unfamiliar handwriting. She opened it. The words hit her like ice. They were not playful, not sweet. They were warnings. Names, dates, messages she did not understand. Fear clawed at her chest. She stepped back, eyes scanning the room. Shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally. The cozy apartment suddenly felt alien. Every laugh and cheer from the streets outside sounded distorted, hollow. She realized the note was not meant for her alone. Nathan's expression hardened, and he moved closer, but his steps were silent, almost deliberate. Emily's instincts screamed at her. Something beyond love hovered in the room. The warmth of his presence transformed into an invisible weight pressing down. The city outside continued its celebration, unaware of the tension inside. Emily's fingers trembled as she clutched the note. Her eyes darted to Nathan, whose smile had vanished entirely. The apartment felt smaller, walls closing in. Every sound became magnified. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of a distant clock, the faint echo of footsteps above. She stepped backward, her boots scraping against the hardwood. Nathan raised a hand, but it was not gentle. It was measured, deliberate, as if he had rehearsed this moment countless times. The note slipped from her grasp. It unfolded on the floor, revealing more words she could barely comprehend. Names repeated, some crossed out, some circled. A chill crawled along her spine. She realized they were all familiar faces. Friends, co-workers, strangers she had seen at cafes. Nathan moved closer, each step soundless yet unavoidable. His voice cut through the thick air, calm but hollow. He spoke her name, but it sounded like a question, a challenge, an accusation. The lights flickered, shadows dancing across the walls. Emily's pulse raced. Her mind screamed to run, but her legs refused. Something in the room shifted, a subtle, unnatural motion in the corners, just beyond sight. She could feel it, the presence of something waiting, watching. A sudden gust of cold air swept past, despite the sealed windows. The note flapped, catching on itself like it was alive. Her chest tightened. Nathan's gaze remained locked on her, unwavering, almost magnetic. The world outside continued celebrating. Fireworks exploded. Laughter echoed. Inside, Emily felt trapped in a suspended moment, a heartbeat stretched into eternity. Something had broken, and she could not tell if it was trust, reality, or the very air around her. She realized the room was no longer ordinary. Every object seemed menacing, familiar shapes twisting into unfamiliar forms. The note whispered in her mind, its names crawling across her vision. Nathan reached out, and the room tilted, the walls bending toward her. Emily's scream caught in her throat. Fear anchored her in place as realization struck. She had walked into a moment she could not escape, a truth that would not let her go. Emily's eyes widened as Nathan's hand hovered just inches from hers. The air thickened, heavy, pressing against her chest. Every heartbeat thundered in her ears, loud, unrelenting. She wanted to move, to flee, but the floor seemed to grip her feet. The note quivered on the floor, flipping open by itself. Words twisted, reshaping into messages she could not read aloud. The letters crawled, coiling around each other, whispering her fears back to her. Nathan's face shifted. Not entirely human, not entirely the man she had trusted. Shadows stretched across his features, bending reality in subtle, impossible ways. His eyes glimmered with intent she could not fathom. A sudden noise, faint but sharp, echoed from the kitchen. Something metallic scraped against the counter. Emily's gaze darted. There was nothing there, yet she felt it watching, circling, waiting. Her breath caught. The warmth that had drawn her here turned icy. The apartment pulsed as if alive, responding to Nathan's presence. The familiar lights overhead flickered violently, casting the room into a strobe of unease. A whisper slithered along the walls, repeating her name. Emily's body shivered uncontrollably. Each step Nathan took seemed to fracture the air, bending sound and shadow together. Suddenly, the note leapt from the floor, spinning in the air like a living thing. It landed in her lap, flipping open to reveal a single, terrifying message. You were never meant to be here. The room tilted again. Emily's vision blurred. Nathan's figure loomed larger, impossibly tall. The city's celebration outside became distant, muted, unreal. Only the cold, the shadows, and the note remained real. Her instinct screamed. She tore herself free, lunging for the door. But it slammed shut before she reached it. The lock clicked in a way that sounded deliberate, final. Emily's scream finally tore free, echoing against walls that now seemed to close in. Nathan advanced, slow, precise, each step a promise she could not escape. The apartment had become a trap, the world outside a lie, and Emily understood, with a chilling clarity, that the new year she had hoped for had already twisted into something far darker. Emily pressed herself against the wall, the cold seeping through her coat. Her pulse raced, each beat louder than the last. Nathan's shadow stretched impossibly across the room, swallowing the familiar corners of the apartment. The note fluttered violently in her hands. The words rearranged themselves, forming a single phrase, sharp and accusing. You cannot leave. Her breath hitched. The air thickened, sticky and suffocating. Every sound from the city outside, the fireworks, the laughter, the cheers, felt miles away, muted, unreal. Only the room remained, alive with menace. Nathan's footsteps were unnervingly silent now, yet she could feel the pressure of his approach. His face was calm, too calm, and the glint in his eyes promised inevitability. Emily stumbled backward, barely catching herself. The walls seemed to pulse with his presence, expanding and contracting like lungs. The note lifted from her hands, spinning in the air before landing on the floor again. It opened to reveal a final line, scrawled in ink that burned her eyes. "You were chosen the moment you arrived." Her chest tightened. Reality warped. The shadows in the corners of the room thickened, stretching toward her, alive with intent. Emily's mind screamed for escape, yet the apartment twisted, hallways elongating, door frames bending. Nathan raised his hand. The temperature plummeted. Her skin prickled. Every instinct screamed danger. The warmth she had felt earlier, the love she had hoped for, evaporated completely. And then she saw it, behind Nathan, in the shadowed corner, a figure that mirrored him, grotesque and distorted. It grinned, waiting. Emily realized she had not come alone into this room. She was surrounded, trapped between the man she thought she loved and something older, something hungry. Her scream tore through the room. The apartment responded, lights flickering violently, shadows writhing. Emily's heart hammered as the realization struck. This night, this love, had been a lure. She was not meant to find warmth. She was meant to confront the impossible. The air thickened around her. Nathan stepped closer, the figure in the corner, leaning forward. Emily's only thought was to survive, to escape the truth that the city outside had already forgotten her. The apartment exhaled. Emily's mind raced, trapped between fear and instinct. The shadows seemed to pulse, yet for the first time, she forced herself to breathe. One steady breath, another, centering herself. Nathan froze. The distorted figure behind him shimmered, uncertain, as if sensing her resolve. Emily's eyes sharpened. She realized the power of this moment lay not in fleeing, but in confronting it. She stepped forward slowly, holding the note tightly. "I am not afraid," she said, her voice trembling but firm. The words echoed in the apartment, resonating against the walls. The shadows quivered, then receded, dissolving into the corners of the room. Nathan's face softened, his tension easing. The metallic coldness lifted from the air. The apartment, once hostile, returned to its familiar warmth. The note slipped from her hands, settling on the floor with a quiet finality. Emily bent down, staring at the words one last time. They no longer twisted or shifted. They were simply ink on paper, a reminder of the night she had faced fear and emerged stronger. Nathan reached for her hand, gently, without menace. Their eyes met, a fragile understanding forming. The terror of the night lingered, but it had transformed into something new. Trust, careful and deliberate. Outside, the city of Toronto welcomed the new year with fireworks and laughter. Inside, Emily and Nathan stood together, sharing warmth, a bond forged not in ease, but in the courage to face the unexpected. The apartment no longer felt like a trap. It felt like the beginning of something real. Emily realized that new love, like the new year, demanded bravery. She was ready to embrace both. The cold air no longer bit at her cheeks. It invited her forward. And for the first time that night, she smiled, fully without fear.